In 2019's Team Upset, the Pokémon TCG would debut one of its most controversial mechanics, Tag Team GX Pokémon. While tag teams were very popular with collectors, this mechanic of multiple monsters would irreversibly power creep the game and lead to tons of players quitting as a result. In today's video, I'm going to explore the problematic mechanic and why many players cite it as the beginning of the end of the Pokémon TCG. To understand Tag Team GXs, let's first analyze the regular GX Pokémon and how they were a successful mechanic. GX Pokémon were Pokémon that gave up 2 prize cards when they were knocked out. But unlike the big EX Pokémon of Black and White and X and Y, the GX Pokémon maintained the appropriate evolution stage that they should be instead of all being basic. These GX Pokémon scaled in HP and power based on their stages. Basics generally focused on powerful and fast offense, while evolutions gained useful abilities and more efficient attacks. GX Pokémon also featured a once per game GX attack. These attacks were modeled after the Z-move mechanic from the video games. Some GX attacks were one-time nukes to send whatever your opponent had packing, but not all of them. Many of the best GX attacks were support-oriented, allowing their player to set up their board, recover resources, or heal damage. Other GX attacks featured strategically unique attacks that allowed their user to play games in a way that their other attacks didn't let them, such as Greninja GX's Shadowy Hunter sniping attack. While not every single format in the first 2 years of Sun and Moon were equally good, most players who were around at the time will attest to the GX mechanic being one of Pokemon's best mechanics, as it brought evolution-focused strategies back to the forefront of the metagame and made for interesting and fun games with lots of comeback potential. This made the first 2 years of Sun and Moon with GX Pokemon a resounding success. This was all shattered in 2019, of course, with the release of the Tag Team GX Pokémon. The Tag Team GX Pokémon gave up 3 prize cards when they were knocked out, meaning that only 2 of them had to be defeated for all 6 prize cards to be taken. While this seems like a solid countermeasure to not play them, they were made so powerful as to force them to the front of the metagame and invalidate nearly everything that came before them. Tag Team GX Pokémon were all basic Pokémon. Instead of having lower HP like most GX basics, they had HP totals that towered far over the biggest Stage 2 GXs. Why use a Stage 2 GX in that case? Well,
that's the neat thing. You don't.
Instantly, the 250 HP record that had been held by the biggest Stage 2 GXs was broken to 300 HP by the biggest Tag Team GXs. While most tag teams didn't have this high of HP, most of the meta-relevant ones had 240 to 270 HP, which still exceeded most of the relevant Evolution GX's HP. While HP power creep has been a consistent factor in the game ever since the Ruby and Sapphire era, only a few times have records been broken to this degree. To complement record-breaking HP stats, they came equipped with ridiculous attacks. While these attacks did cost a lot of energy to use, this period of the game saw some of the strongest energy acceleration cards come out to ensure players were never second-guessing themselves. Herein lies the key mechanic of the Tag Team GX Pokémon, which was their GX attacks. Tag Team GX attacks were characterized by providing one effect, but if the Tag Team GX had extra energy attached to it, they would provide some of the most game-breaking effects ever put to cards. Effects so ridiculous you'd think they were a custom card you found on Google Images. Effects such as, take an extra prize card for the rest of the game, take 2 prize cards instantly, discard 2 of your opponent's Pokemon in play, shuffle your entire opponent's hand into their deck, shuffle all of your opponent's benched Pokemon into their deck, your opponent shuffles all energy from their board into their deck. And this isn't even including the attacks that pretty much won the game if you got to use them, like Pikachu and Zekrom's Tag Bolt GX, which did 200 damage to the active and 170 damage to the bench, usually taking 2 knockouts at once. What were they thinking making the Tag Team GX mechanic so broken? Well, they probably weren't. Pikachu and Zekrom, or Pikarom as it was called, was the first of the dominant Tag Team GXs to dominate the meta. With no great ways to guard bench Pokemon around, its Full Blitz attack quickly powered up Tag Bolt to take multiple knockouts at once. Due to efficient energy acceleration, it was pretty doable to get a turn 1 Full Blitz, which set up energy for a turn 2 Tag Bolt. Worst case scenario, if you whiff the attack, I guess you can just knock out whatever your opponent's active is anyway with Zapdos, a single energy attacker. In the following set, Unbroken Bonds, we'd get another titan of the mechanic, Reshizard. Reshizard used the ridiculous amount of fire support to hit extremely hard, and that's all it did, but it hit so hard and was so big that as it turns out, that's all you need. Using the Welder Supporter card, it could power up its Double Blaze GX on the very first turn of the game, and threaten to use its Flare Strike attack on the second turn of the game for one-hit KOs. If you didn't one-hit KO Reshiram and Charizard, and how could you with its 270 HP, it would hit you back with its Outrage attack for tons of damage. While the meta around this time still featured strong evolutions, this would change with 2019 Worlds, where it was announced that the first 4 sets of Sun and Moon would rotate. This removed many of the best Evolution GX cards and lots of the support options that helped them. These support options were replaced with cards that more favorably benefited the Tag Team GXs, as the meta shifted almost entirely around them. The new rotated format exposed another flaw in the design of Tag Team GXs, which is their deck space. Evolution cards have to use lots of deck space since they have to include their necessary prerequisite evolutions and sometimes cards to manage them, such as Rare Candy, which lets you get right into a Stage 2 from a basic. Tag Team GXs, on the other hand, required themselves. Instead of spending 12 to 16 cards to fit an evolution line and its supporting pieces, they took up 4 slots and took very minimal support to enable them. This allowed Tag Team GX decks to more easily fit item cards that boosted their consistency and allowed them to gust. With the rotation of Guzma in 2019, Custom Catcher became the gust of choice, and no decks used it better than the Tag Team GX decks, which could care less about the 4 required slots in the deck that Custom Catcher took. We also saw the release of Mewtwo and Mew, which put a new target as the best Tag Team GX around, since it could do literally anything with its ability to copy attacks. This card would go on to win the 2019 World Championships when paired with the Welder Supporter card and lots of Fire, Colorless, and Psychic attackers to be used alongside it. Following the 2019 World Championships and the full entrance into the tag team game, we'd see the final tag team set Cosmic Eclipse, which would debut arguably people's least favorite tag team GX Pokemon of all time, Arceus and Dialga and Palkia GX, which was nicknamed ADP. ADP's Altered Creation attack boosted its players' damage by 30 and made all of their knockouts take an extra prize card for the rest of the game. What this meant in practice is that single prize decks now gave up 2 prizes, and 2 prize GX liabilities now gave up 3 prize cards. Its ultimate ray attack, when boosted by Altered Creation GX, now took knockouts on the basic 2 prize Pokemon that roamed the meta, often setting up for games that ended in a few turns. ADP initially paired with Keldeo EX, which saw lots of success before the release of Sword and Shield, which gave it its new best partner in Zacian V. Zacian V's Intrepid Sword ability could end the turn and draw 3 cards, so if the player went first, they didn't really have much of a downside. Intrepid Sword also allowed you to accelerate as many of the metal energy you found in those 3 cards to Zacian V, which oftentimes allowed Zacian to get swinging as soon as the second turn of the game. It also just made a brutal basic attacker that could one-hit KO many of the best Pokemon in the game, such as Tag Team GX Pokemon, after Altered Creation boosted its damage by 30. This deck was finally perfected with the release of Boss's Orders, which allowed the deck to consistently chase down the opponent's Pokemon. The term Boss came into being as a way to describe how the ADP Zacian deck almost always ended games in 3 swift turns, with their first turn being an Altered Creation GX attack, before firing off 2 attacks led by Boss's Orders to KO 2 Pokemon for 3 prize cards each. Thankfully, the pandemic of 2020 saved us from having to experience a tournament environment with this deck at the top with Boss's Orders, for what was one of the worst times ever to play the game. Following the legacy of Tag Team GX Pokemon, the following VMAX Pokemon had to be power crept even more, with HP totals reaching 340. Even then, the VMAXs initially struggled to keep up with the more powerful Tag Team GX Pokemon, which had incredible attack effects. The Tag Team GXs truly never disappeared. They couldn't really power creep the tag teams. Sure, attack damage of the VMAXs and these new basic Vs easily one-hit KO'd the tag teams, but they were never gone. Many of them were staying around as consistent threats or supporting new powerful VMAX cards until the time they rotated out of the standard format. Now they're left to roam the expanded format, have ghosts of arguably one of the worst eras of the game, forever there to remind us on how to not design a mechanic. Even today, the effects of the power creep they brought is still felt on the game. While basic HP isn't as high as 300 HP anymore, the game has not slowed down one bit since in terms of the pace of the game, and it might never do that again. I hope Pokemon has learned their lesson about big basic power creep though, and hopefully they'll avoid printing once per game effects that are too powerful to be contained. Surely. Right? Thank you all so much for watching this video essay on the Tag Team GX mechanic. Let me know your favorite or least favorite Tag Team GX Pokemon in the comment section, and do be sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these type of videos. And I also do retro tabletop videos every once in a while, exploring the game's history through playing it. Also be sure to check out my Greatest Sets of All Time series, where I talk about all of the cards that make up some of the greatest sets in the Pokemon's history. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.